My name is Alex. I am responsible for sales, marketing, and analytics at iDeals Solutions. It is a product company that globally provides solutions for mergers and acquisitions operations, and our product is a virtual data room for M&A deals. Think of it as Dropbox, but with advanced features built specifically for secure, high-stakes transactions. It's designed to support due diligence and gives full control over sensitive documents during M&A. Well, it was a classic long sale journey. I think Roman.ua first got on my radar about 5 to 7 years ago as a performance marketing agency in Ukraine. But at the time, I didn't have the kind of challenges that required bringing in an external partner. Over time, though, I kept thinking, this is the kind of agency I could see myself working with when the right project comes along. The final push came during the first phase of our project, when Roman's team ran an audit of our marketing and current setup. The way they approached it, the insights they uncovered, that's what convinced me we were ready to move forward together. In the structure of our acquisition, the paid channel is quite significant, but at the same time, it has a certain ceiling. That is, you can't say that we're in the niche of game development, where you can endlessly go higher and higher in terms of traffic acquisition. There is a certain demand in the world. In a way, it is regulated by mergers and acquisitions operations that are happening in the world. And even periods of economic growth increase demand, periods of global economic downturns reduce demand, and accordingly, paid traffic, especially Google Ads, has this correlation. But the scope is limited. And at the end of last year, we, on one hand, reached a point where it became clear that we were, in principle, capturing a significant portion of this raw traffic in Google Ads. But how optimally we were spending the funds was the question. There were many indirect indicators showing that we could achieve the same volume with certain savings. And on the other hand, the nature of the development of our Google Ads and the nature of the development of other related digital channels was not systematic. That is, it was a new function that has developed over the last 2 years. And there was a certain understanding of the lack of internal expertise on how to work with these channels. With these prerequisites and goals, we started looking for someone who could, on one hand, enhance internal expertise, and on the other hand, help solve the task of optimizing traffic costs. We solved the problem. I cannot say it was done like that. In my estimation, it took about 3 to 4 months to reach a point where we could conclude and say, yes, indeed, here is the interval, here is the interval. We saw the difference. First and foremost, we significantly reduced costs. On average, I can say that we reduced them by about 35 to 40%. And in terms of money, these are substantial amounts. And just like that, on one hand, by spring, we managed to optimize traffic costs, and it already seemed like a plateau in terms of future developments. However, we found ourselves in a new situation where global demand started shifting and competition began to increase. Well, roughly speaking, there were fewer leads in search. Our competitors also started entering these channels more aggressively. And here, we were already in a situation where we needed to grow, despite the overall decline. I can say that we have solved this task. If we compare acquisition from the non-branded traffic point of view, then last fall, when the market was still stable, it was somewhat on the rise. But this spring, summer, there was a bit of a decline. Despite these trends, we even increased the number of leads acquired by 30%. So even this goal, which was originally out of scope when we started, was not on the agenda, but we can say that we even achieved it through focused attention. The peculiarity of traffic costs in these niche audiences is generally higher. You can say that, for example, within Google Ads, a click can easily average $20, $30, $40, and some outliers can be $100 or $150. And as we understand, if there are difficulties with conversion, if there are difficulties with some stages of the funnel, then these stories can easily become unprofitable. I can say as an indication that right now, we are even ready to pay over $1,000 just for a lead. Accordingly, due to the fact that the click price is very high, it's very easy to go out of this range, meaning some campaigns might be incorrectly set up or some limits might be set incorrectly. And where a lead used to cost $1,000, it will now cost $1,800. Errors can occur quite significantly. That's why the cost of error is high. The overall marketing budget for paid channels in our case exceeds 100,000. Therefore, fluctuations of 30 to 40% are quite significant in terms of impact. And coming back to the previous comment regarding the contribution of the agency or the cost of maintaining the channel. As you can see, the cost of a mistake can exceed the expenses for in-house specialists or let's say an external agency by 10, 20 or even 30 times. And these challenges, I can't say that they have even fully stopped now, because there are some bot attacks, some click fraud, all these dubious operations on the internet that relate to traffic. And in our case, the cost of lack of control can easily turn into tens of thousands of dollars and may be significant. Before we started working together, I had experience with other agencies. In Ukraine, they are basically at the top of the list. One of the disadvantages was that these were companies that had expanded too much, both horizontally and vertically. On one hand, you work with one or two specialists. They have their own mindset for solving this task. But those people who influence the decision-making of this team or all the teams that work with clients, they are up there at the top level of the hierarchy. And the feedback context, let's say, can be quite limited in terms of effectiveness. On one hand, they will always listen to you and say, yes, of course, we understand that we need to reinforce here and reinforce there. But the chances for these people to change something are minimal. That is, if they don't provide an analyst in the budget, they can't add an analyst to their team because they have some kind of limitations for such tasks. Or if they have some kind of crisis situation in the company as a whole, well, that's where they are. And they can't at some point in some month or over a period of 2 months devote more time to your tasks because they have their own manager who says, but only 10 hours and no more. Working with you, in other words, we had this expectation. I can say that it fully met our expectations. Due to the fact that the company is small, due to the fact that the company's management is deeply involved in tasks and maintains communication with the client, many things can be changed effectively. So everyone always has flaws, some difficulties, different approaches. But the question is, how many initiatives from your side ultimately lead to these changes? Like when you tell a colleague, how about we change the reporting format and make it like this. 2 weeks have passed, they changed the reporting format. Let's say if you do something like this, you will structure it in such a way, describe it like this. For example, conduct marketing experiments in such a format. Okay, we're doing it. And in large companies, this works very badly. They have their own framework or something like that, and they are within it. This worked with you, and I can say that the level of flexibility and willingness to go deeper when a situation requires it is probably the main value. I can say that since we are a product company and operate in the B2B segment, the cost of these services is not significant in terms of the goals we want to achieve. I would say we welcome increased expenses if it qualitatively impacts the result. Therefore, the value pays off, well, multiple times. I just talked about a strong component when the company's management can get involved in direct projects, in communication with the client, and I can even imagine some hands-on work, like going into Google Ads to see what is happening and how a company is working. This approach has a downside, which I can consider a disadvantage. A certain lack of such systematic project management, where there are designated people who are dedicated to these tasks, for coordination, synchronization, consistency of some processes, which last, for example, a month. when it's not the company management, when it's not top level, which nonetheless has some displacement of some projects over others, which has tasks arising outside the client scope, shifting to administrative. I don't even know, like vacation, for example. When we say that a company has a dedicated function for project management, organization, coordination, in my estimation, this will help you move even faster and also reduce the number of situations where you need to enter this point. Let's have a chat, synchronize, let's put together the picture of what's happening here and there. I would more likely recommend you as a company to those who strive for high transparency in work. And for those looking for an opportunity, well, let's sort of get a team that kind of works internally. So it's not some agency where you're dealing with other tasks. These are people who almost empathize with the company's goals. And here's another important component, but it's probably important for scalable businesses that are growing. But in our case, it worked. That's worth noting. We started with one scope when, in fact, only 2 people were working on the project. But over time, we demanded more attention. And from your agency side, well, there was this necessary flexibility when you started involving additional people in the project who, on the one hand, were equivalent or even higher than necessary in terms of expertise. And on the other hand, they get involved in tasks quickly enough. We do not have the kind of situation where we need to work with someone for another month, setting them up for communication. And you acted as a backend for us in terms of these tasks when it was possible to calmly hand over this and now hand over this and now hand over this. And well, there was no drop in quality. It was maintained at the level that was already set in the initial project. So if the business is growing, I can say that the agency Roman.ua is also ready for these challenges. The agency monitors the situation itself to know when to increase the scope and when to involve new people in the projects.